Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Eric Voss, and this is a breakdown of John Wick Chapter 4. All the Easter eggs, references, callbacks, details you missed. Oh, dang it, I probably should have led with, I am Eric Klaus! This movie was nuts! I had a blast! I hope this isn't the end. It's not the end. Hey, and subscribe to our new channel, The Deep Dive, where I did a comprehensive full movie analysis of the first John Wick and why it's so great. And you can support our growing network by grabbing one of our John Wick inspired shirts at nerdriot.shop. The film opens with John's fist hitting a bloody target as we hear, I am the way into the city of woe. I am the way into eternal pain. I am the way to go among the lost. Before me, there were no created things, but those who last forever, as do I. Abandon all hope, you who are about to enter here. This is a quote from Dante's Inferno, in which Virgil guides Dante through the 9 circles of hell. This is coming, of course, from Lawrence Fishburne as the Bowery King, now sponsoring John Wick as they go against the High Table. Since Fishburne joined this franchise in Chapter 2, all of these movies have really just been Matrix trilogy reunions, both cast and stunt crew. It's just great to see Fishburne and Reeves together. Morpheus was in many ways Neo's Virgil, and now the Bowery King plays that role for John. This whole film, more than the other 3 that preceded it, really is a journey through hell for John. And it ends with him having an opportunity to enter through the gates of heaven, but instead he sits at the steps. Next, the sun rises over Morocco and 4 riders on horseback, like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. The final rider represents death in the book of Revelation, as John does here. John fires exactly 15 shots, dropping that 3rd rider on the 15th and then promptly reloads. John always reloads after firing the precise magazine capacity in all of these movies. It is one of the established rules I explained in my deep dive analysis. While watching this movie, there were some moments, especially during that Arc de Triomphe sequence, where you couldn't always see him reloading, but I bet when we rewatch this on 4K, we'll see all that reloading. Now in Morocco, this desert rock is actually the same filming location from a key scene in Lawrence of Arabia. The Elder from John Wick 3 died apparently, and has now been replaced by a new Elder played by Giorgio. The Elder says, the only way John Wick will ever have peace or freedom now or ever is in death. And John says, I know. John Wick foreshadowing his death at the end of this movie. And the Elder says, I'm afraid you've come a very long way for nothing. And John says, yeah, not really. And then bang! So Keanu Reeves reportedly only says 380 words in this movie, but you know what? Who cares? Count the hits and the bullets and the reloading, not the words. This ain't a book report, folks. A film is a visual medium, and it's always better to show, not to tell. But it is kind of funny. 380 words, and by my count, he kills 180 people. Just goes to show you the priorities of these movies, and I don't have a problem with it.
He said, I haven't spoken in like 15 weeks. He's after like an Eastwood kind of vibe, you know?
Clancy Brown as the Harbinger checks into the Continental with Karen Lance Reddick, who recently passed away just a week before this movie released. RIP to one of the best actors who left us far too early. His death just hits differently in this movie. And a reminder that Charon is the name of the Greek mythological ferryman across the river Styx in the underworld. Now the Harbinger is missing his ring finger. Remember in Chapter 3, Parabellum, John had his ring finger severed and he lost his wedding band as a price for recommitting himself to the High Table. But he never got his ring back in this movie, except, I guess, in his death. The Harbinger, true to his name of being the Harbinger of Doom, reports from the Marquis to Winston that the hotel is condemned. And they got an hour to get the F out. As they report to the Marquis, Winston says that Ned Kelly's final words were, before he was hanged, such is life, referring to the infamous Australian outlaw, leader of the Kelly Gang, who was caught and hanged in 1880. The Marquis Vincent de Gramont, Bill Skarsgård, asks Winston if he believes in rules, and he does, but also second chances. Winston's rules in the first film were very, very important, but he did allow John a second life at the game. He's now paying the price for that tolerance. They have to watch as the Continental is destroyed, and the Marquis shoots Karen, which for many reasons feels like an earth-shattering violation, because without a Karen, we have no one to govern the passage in and out of the underworld. The gates of hell have been ruptured, and all those inside trapped. In Paris, or more specifically, Louis XIV's Sun Palace in nearby Versailles, we meet Kane, Donnie Yen, a blind assassin. Now, Donnie Yen also played the blind Chirrut Imwe in Rogue One, but the actor is himself not blind. Mr. Nobody the Tracker goes to the Osaka Continental with his emotional support dog. The manager, Shimazu Koji, is played by the great Hiroyuki Sanada, martial arts screen legend, recently seen in Mortal Kombat in the amazing film Bullet Train. He provides sanctuary for his friend John, which gets him in trouble with the High Table Men, accompanied by Kane. And you'll notice the lobby and the rooftop have all been lit red and pink, especially with those cherry blossoms, but the lights now shift to green, as if to say, from stop to go. The battle begins. And this whole Osaka fight is definitely one of the best fights of the film. John and Akira team up to fight the high table soldiers. Now these guys are heavily armored up, like samurai. One blocks every one of John's shots with this body armor until John has just had enough. He grabs his leg, tilts back the torso, exposing the guy's neck, and then John shoots up through the neck. I love how these soldiers have these interesting masks with faces that seem to be rooted in Japanese mythology. After parting with Akira and Shimazu, John goes alone in the gallery. This is when things get real cool. There's one move in particular where he stomps on the assault rifle and then no look slides it away with his foot. I just love how many combinations it takes for John to take each one down. Like, it not only gives each warrior a higher degree of lethality, but it also gives John more accomplishment for each one he's able to get through. John grabs a pair of nunchucks and uses them to take down two more suited guards. In one fluid motion, he drapes them over his shoulders to free up his hands to use his pistol. He's just as effective using the chain of the nunchucks to trip his opponents, and then he stomps on a guy's crotch just to get him to sit up right into the angle of his gun, and then blam. As the fight goes on, John just gets more and more comfortable relying on the nunchucks, as the firearms just empty too fast for him. It really just becomes a celebration of tradition and the old way. Now the bounty on John goes up from 18 million to 20 million. Mr. Nobody shoots at Kane to help John escape and saves John outside. He is waiting for that bounty to get up to 50 million, like a guy on an oversold Delta flight waiting for those to get up to at least $1,500 for him to give up his seat. Kane and Shimazu duel in the garden. Shimazu dies, and Kane lets Akira escape. And General Tina Sawayama and Donnie Yen completely crushed it in this movie. Everyone in this movie was great. Mr. Nobody decides to take the job to kill John from de Gramont, gruesomely pulling his hand off the dagger. And as he shakes his bloody hand with de Gramont, we see that he wears his watch on the inside of his wrist, as John always does, something soldiers do so they can check the time while they're holding a rifle. John walks up the snow-covered steps marked with Latin phrases including Oderint dum mituant, meaning let them hate so long as they fear us. Favorite saying of Roman Emperor Caligula. Charon's grave reads Vivamus moriendum est, meaning to live is to die, and beneath amicum meus, meaning my friend. But to live is to die, similar to what Kane and John Wick exchange in their final duel. Those who cling to life die, and those who cling to death live. Now there are other graves around Charon's. Rovira, Owens, Gilbertson. Danny Rivera worked in the art department for this movie. Christopher Gilbertson worked on the crew as a set armorer. Presumably these characters were past concierges. Winston sends John to Berlin to get his ticket mended by the Ruskaruma. John's adoptive sister, Katya, this is actress Natalia Tena, who you'll know as Tonks from Harry Potter and Osha from Game of Thrones. She says if he kills Kilia Harkin, she'll mend his ticket. And in this scene, she calls him Jardani. A reminder that John Wick's full name is Jardani Jovanovich. But hey, can I level for a second with you about March? The month is gross. It's not winter, it's not spring, it's just gray and wet. It's really a perfect month for not leaving the house, which is just one of the many reasons why I use Factor to get my meals shipped to me. And yes, in other videos, you'll hear me talk about doing the same thing with HelloFresh, but Factor is now owned by HelloFresh. I use both, and it makes my life so much easier. Factor not only lets me skip the trip to the grocery store, but I also get to skip chopping, prepping, and cleaning up. Yeah, baby! Factor meals are fresh, never frozen, and ready in 2 minutes, so all you have to do is just heat and enjoy. Factor has 34 weekly options, so I never get tired of what I'm eating. Plus, if you ever want to switch things up or just pad out the snack selection in your pantry, Factor has an assortment of over 36 quick bites, smoothies, juices, and more satisfying add-ons. Each meal is prepared by chefs and approved by dietitians, so you know you'll feel good about what you're eating no matter what your diet calls for. Factor has keto, calorie smart, vegan, vegetarian, and protein plus meals on the menu each week. This month, one of the things I got was this like sun-dried tomato chicken with chopped up broccoli on the side. It was so amazing. Yum. I said yum before I bit into it because I knew how damn good it would be. It's actually really good. To get some easy, delicious meals of your own, just head to Factor75.com or click the link below and use the code ROCKSTARS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. Once more, that's Factor75.com and use the code ROCKSTARS50 to get 50% off your first Factor box. John ends up in a ridiculously rigged game of 5-card draw with Killa, Kane, and Mr. Nobody, and John picks up his ace of spades from his 2 pair of aces over 8s to slice Killa's neck. Remember that ace of spades was the card that Killa initially flourished in his face. Similar to the red circle fight in the first film, John has to fight his way through these oblivious dancing clevers, and then he gets thrown off a balcony. But rather than just being one story, he falls onto a pipe first and then hits the floor. But this time overall, it's a mission accomplished. He eventually kills Killa, and he takes one of his golden teeth as a trophy. and is proof. Now, Winston meets d'Agremont in the Louvre in front of the famous painting of Liberty Leading the People. This is commemorating the July Revolution of 1830, not the 1789 Revolution. And d'Agremont asks if Winston wants to go the way of Gavroche. Now, he's referring to the boy in the painting who is the inspiration of the character Gavroche in Les Miserables, a character who dies a martyr, as Winston wished he was actually killed a martyr instead of left alive to be branded a coward or a turncoat. At the end of the scene, Winston stops in front of the larger painting. This is the Raft of the Medusa, a painting meant to show every type of emotion humans can have in a crisis. At one point, d'Agremont watches a Parisian ballerina by herself in a theater. Could it be a tease for Ana de Armas's ballerina spin-off movie in the John Wick universe? Remember in chapter 3, there was Angelica Houston's character, the director. It was set up the idea that assassins could be trained as dancers in New York. I just think anytime we see a ballerina in a John Wick movie, we're gonna have to wonder that. So John and the Marquis set the terms for their duel. John gets a new ballistic suit from the Bowery King, and d'Agremont tries to slow John down and kill him by upping the bounty to 26 million. And this is announced over a radio DJ. We see her mouth shown in close-up. This is an homage by director Chad Stahelski to Walter Hill's The Warriors, which has a very similar sequence of a DJ calling the gangs of New York to stop the Warriors from reaching Coney Island, and also features the song of Nowhere to Run, Nowhere to Hide. The song then switches over to a cover of Painted Black as John fights in the street and drives through the roundabout around the Arc de Triomphe. I love this sequence, especially the great moment when John is in a shootout with Chidi and he uses a passing bus as a chance to reload. The bounty gets up to 40 million and the fight breaks out into this residential building where John gets a hold of a Dragon's Breath shotgun. Whoa, baby. And there is an incredible 2-minute oneer following John's movement from overhead. This reminded me a lot of the game Hotline Miami. Also, one of my favorite scenes in Minority Report when those spider bots were checking everyone's eyes. But even more than the perfectly timed stunts and the movement of all this, I'm just most impressed with the set design and the construction. Each room has a different floor pattern and specific furniture layout to make each room look distinct and interesting from above. John wrestles with Mr. Nobody, but when John sees Chidi about to shoot a dog, and remembering Chidi throwing that dog into a car in the roundabout earlier, John remembers how this all started with poor Daisy, and he shoots Chidi to save the dog. And John has to ascend the infamous steps of Sacré-Cœur in Paris. I have climbed these stairs before, they are no joke. Remember, this movie began with John in the underworld quoting Dante's Inferno, and now John must have to fight his way back up out of hell. And you totally feel the pain, heaving breaths as he makes those final steps just for freaking Chidi to show up and kick him back down all of the steps. First just halfway down, and then again all the way back down to the ground level. Oh, God. But his friend Kane helps him, and as they make their way back up the stairs, Chidi gets stabbed in the hand with a pencil. Kane's the one who did it this time, but we know John Wick loves to kill people with pencils. And then Mr. Nobody has a dog, bites Chidi in the balls. Mr. Nobody waits just a bit long to shoot him, and then the dog pees on him. Okay. And they make it just in time for sunrise for their duel. Kane having to serve as d'Agremont's champion. They step out 30 paces, shot one goes into both their arms. 20 paces, John gets hit in the shoulder, Kane in the abdomen, and then 10 paces out, those who cling to death live, those who cling to life die. And Kane shoots John, but you do not see John's pistol go off. So when d'Agremont tries to execute him, John has one bullet left in the chamber, and Ian McShane's delivery was so good as he says, "You arrogant asshole. He hasn't shot yet." Now, as John bleeds on the steps, we flash back to John and Helen for the first film. He says her name, Helen, and he rolls over. Now in the next scene, Winston and the Bowery King stand over John and Helen's graves with John's pit bull from the first movie, and John's grave now reads loving husband as he requested earlier, with the golden sunrise over Manhattan contrasting the dark rain that poured over this graveyard in the 2014 film. Now there's a post-credit scene showing Kane returning to Paris to reunite with his daughter, but Akira jumps in with a knife, so who knows whether he lives or dies. It seems like they might have shot the scene where it seemed like Kane died, but then they re-edited it to leave it open-ended. Speaking of open-ended endings, even though Chad Stahelski has said that they might take a break from John Wick films for a while and just focus instead on the Continental prequel spin-off series and the Ballerina spin-offs, and despite the fact that Reeves has said they only really made a fourth film to deal with the reality of John's death, I do not think John is dead. Our man has ended movies bleeding out before, and I'm not just saying this because they want to make money. I just think Keanu Reeves likes making these stunt-driven movies with his buds. But I do like how when the Bowery King asks if John is in heaven or in hell and Winston says who knows, we do get a close-up of the dog, which just makes it feel like John is still alive to me. But it is pretty cool how we end this movie in a graveyard after the Marquis earlier called John, quote, a ghost looking for a graveyard. Another reminder to subscribe to our new channel, The Deep Dive, and you can support us by grabbing some merch at nerdriot.shop. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at EABoss. Follow New Rockstars and subscribe to New Rockstars for more analysis of everything you love. Thanks for watching. Bye.